If you look at the proposals, the tax proposals of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, the first thing you'll notice about Hillary Clinton's is just what I mentioned about Obamacare earlier. She's going to keep it, and she's going to fix it. She's going to put additional requirements on healthcare companies, and she's going to raise your taxes or some sort of tax so she can further subsidize these health insurance policies, or she's going to go for some sort of a, single payer system. That's going to be her fix, because her fix is always higher taxes. One good example of that is the death tax. Our guest right now is Jim Martin. He is the chairman of the 60 Plus Association. Jim, how are you?
Hey, I'm fine. Glad to be with you.
Well, I'm glad to have you here, and I appreciate you giving us some time today. First of all, tell me a little bit about your association.
Well, we the 60 Plus, we represent seniors. We come from a decidedly right-of-center viewpoint, unlike the AARP, which doesn't like to talk about it, but they come from a left-of-center. We also don't take tax dollars as the AARP does. We also have an entertainer named legendary singer. You probably heard of him if you're old enough, Mark. A guy named Pat Boone.
Absolutely.
Spokesman at 60 Plus. And he's just a terrific guy to work with.
Well, the subject today is the death tax, and I know that Hillary Clinton seems to think that she has a right to take a huge cut of what you're worth when you pass away. I know it's going to affect small business owners, farmers, people like that. Let's talk about that today.
Yeah, and what it's a height of hypocrisy on her part. I really absolutely foam at the mouth when I think about it, because she knows it's Hippocratic, and that the very wealthy, like Hillary and Bill Clinton, they will not pay this. They have lawyers and accountants to set up trusts and foundations to in their case, it will exempt their Chappaqua estate. It's that simple. But who it's going to harm is what you just said a minute ago, Mark. Small businesses, farmers and ranchers all over the country. They don't have the liquid capital, if you will, to spend on lawyers and accountants. And they also talk about, she's trying to satisfy a lot of Bernie Sanders' socialist backers. They talk about the transfer of wealth. Well, the transfer of wealth from very, very wealthy people, that transfer is going to go to lawyers and accountants.
Sure.
And who can blame them for setting up these trusts and foundations? This may be the most misunderstood and despised and unfair of all taxes. There's someone once said the government, in its quest for money, if it moves, tax it. Well, in this case, if it doesn't move, they're still going to tax it.
Dead bodies don't move. Yeah, that's right. I thought about this a while back, and people have kind of forgotten about this, but I'm just waiting for, I'm waiting for it, because I know that if Hillary Clinton gets elected, this is going to rear its head again. Along the lines of the death tax, if you pass away and you hold certain holdings, mutual funds or stocks or whatever, the value of that jumps up to the value that it is on the day that you die. So that if you've got capital gains on it, your heirs don't have to pay taxes on something you've owned for 30 years, and they don't have to pay taxes on 30 years of capital gains. The liberals have decided that that's wrong somehow, and that's another way for them to transfer wealth, is by sticking it to people who are survivors. That's what this death tax is.
Yeah, exactly. Where there's the valuation discounts, that's the newest wrinkle, or the step up in basis. It doesn't matter. They look at the wealthy and say, oh, this is where we can get more income. What they fail to point out is the estate tax contributes less than 1% year in and year out of the federal revenues. On top of that, even Bill Clinton's own Secretary of the Treasury, Lawrence Summers, and Alicia Muniel, she was a member of his Council of Economic Advisors. They've all published works on the estate tax's stifling effect on job growth and the economy as a whole. And by that I mean that study after study shows that if you leave that money with the rightful heirs, they'll do one of a couple of things. They'll either invest money in brand new startup businesses or in existing businesses. And guess what that does? That produces more workers.
Sure.
Workers then, what do? They pay taxes. So it's really a revenue loser in the long run. And quite frankly, we've been trying to repeal it for 20 years, Mark. And another thing that people don't realize, it was always a temporary tax. 4 times in our nation's history, hit the wealthy, the extremely wealthy, for defense purposes.
Right.
Back in 1797, 1862, 1898, the Spanish-American War. It was always repealed within a year or two after hostilities had ended. Guess what? The 4th time, to help finance World War I, which in 1916, when it was over around 1918, as someone pointed out, the lone survivor from World War I, unfortunately, is this temporary tax, which has become permanent.
Yeah, very, very true. I tell you what, Jim Martin from the 60 Plus Association, I appreciate your time. People can go to 60plus.org to find out more about the association and more information on some of these issues like the death tax.
Thank you so much for having us, Mark.
Well, thank you for your time. I do appreciate that. Interesting conversation to have because you know that that's exactly we've already seen it in her plans. Her plan is to raise the death tax, and she wants to convince you it's never going to affect you. Don't you worry. But it very well could. It absolutely could. So good.